Hey guys, it's Jeremy, Classic Guitar Rack. I haven't done a product video in quite a while, so I wanted to post this. If you're like me and you're maybe a weekend player, you're playing a dad band or whatever, you're not playing in an arena. You don't need a Marshall, you don't need a 412s. You just need a good amp that you can gig with. Well, there's a couple problems that go on if you're trying to buy an amp, right? Number one, let's say you want a tube amp, right? You just want a nice low watt, 20 watt tube amp, single 12 that you can gig with, right? They're expensive. A Fender Princeton Reverb reissue is going to cost you $1,000 for an amp. Okay, and that's the low end. I mean, they go up from there just for a basic no frills amp. So then you're like, okay, well, I don't have to have tube. I can do solid state, which, by the way, guys, for gigging, the whole tube snobbery is really kind of stupid. Some of the best sounds I've ever heard live is some guy playing a PV Bandit 65 or a Special 130 solid state amp with pedals, and they sound great. Okay, so you can get a great sound from a solid state amp, which brings me to my next point. Any of the new solid state amps, whether it's Fender, Black Star, whoever you're looking at, they make these entry level or even intermediate style amps that they feel like they have to jam full of digital modeling crap. I don't want that crap. It sounds like crap, okay? I want a basic amp. I'm going to use pedals, right? And I'm analog. I'm using analog pedals through an analog amp. I don't need all that high-tech bull crap. Okay, I don't want to plug it into my computer. I don't want that. I'm like the old man yelling at you to stay off of his lawn, and I admit it, right? I grew up playing analog amps with analog pedals, and that's what I continue to want to do, right? So if someone would come along and make, even if it's a solid state amp, a 40 to 60 watt solid state amp like the old PV Bandits, I'd buy it in a heartbeat. I don't need onboard effects. I don't want that crap. Okay, I don't even need a master volume. If someone would make an amp with just EQ and reverb, I'm all over it. Okay, give me a good speaker, a nice clean sound. I'll use pedals for the rest. I get super frustrated when I'm shopping for amps. I have a Princeton Reverb, a reissue. It's a nice little amp, and I use it, and I've gigged with it. But I'm always on the lookout for a good basic amp that's not going to cost a fortune, that's loud enough that I can gig with at the pizza joint on the weekends. And I've found the perfect unit. Let me introduce you to this beauty. Manufactured by JMF. I think they were headquartered in Salina, Kansas. Is that how you pronounce it? I think it's Salina, Kansas. Made in the US, late 70s, early 80s. I'm not sure if this is late 70s, early 80s, but I remember actually in the early days, I started buying like Guitar Player magazine and stuff around 1981. And I remember seeing ads for these guys. This is a great little amp. I paid $50 for it, and it looks brand new. It's in pristine condition. I've since looked on the internets and found these anywhere from $50 to $150 for this particular model. This is the Spectra 112, which is misleading. What would you think if you bought a Spectra 112? You'd think a 12-inch speaker, but no. It's a 10-inch speaker in a Spectra 112. A little misleading. However, this amp is awesome. It's small, it's lightweight, 60 watts, US made. Look at the controls here. I do have a volume Then you got your basic EQ, you got reverb, and a master volume. Now, we all know a lot of us started out with amps with master volumes. So you'd crank the volume, and then with the master volume would control your volume. You'd get a crunchy, distorted sound. To be honest, not a super great sound, at least not if you crank the volume. But at about halfway, not a bad sound. What really impresses me about this amp, the clean tones are awesome. It literally sounds almost as good as my Princeton reverb that costs, I think I paid $800 for mine. Okay, this was $50. 60 watts, lightweight, nice and sturdy. My only beef with this amp is the reverb. And it could just be something I can get in and tinker with. It works, but it doesn't even kick in till I get it to about 4, and then it's really a little more reverb than I like, right? And then you crank it up from there, and it gets really reverby, right? So that's the only little issue I've had with this amp. It's in great shape. $50. Wow. Now, somewhere in the early 80s, Dean Markley bought, I don't know if they bought out JMF or if they just bought this amp, but if you see early 80s versions of this amp, it might say Dean Markley down here instead of JMF. So you can find the Dean Markley version of this amp, and then they later even made like a blonde version of it. I don't know as much about those. I'm researching. I think they maybe have changed some things, and I've seen some comments that they weren't quite as good after Dean Markley bought them. However, let me just say, if you find one of these, if you see one of these in your area, if you see it on Facebook Marketplace or somewhere, I've been super impressed. For $50, are you kidding me? I'm totally going to gig with this. This would also, it's similar in size to my Princeton, 10-inch speakers in both. This would be great for a stereo chorus setup, right? Have 2 of these dudes. It would be awesome. But if you find one, get one. Let's play it, see what it sounds like. Okay, guys, I've got my Telecaster plugged in. My volume's on 4. Master volume's at about 2. Treble's at 8. Middle is at 8. Bass is at 8. Reverb is at 4. And again, like I mentioned, this is the lowest setting I can have with reverb without it just cutting out completely. So that's my only beef. So I'm on my, let's start with my rhythm pickup on my Telecaster. Ignore my crappy playing. Here's my middle pickup. Lead pickup. Now if I crank up the volume a little, I get a little more dirt. So there you go, my $50 amp. I didn't run any pedals through it. It sounds great with pedals. It's got a nice, clean, neutral tone, a palette to begin with. No DSP crap, no tinny digital sounding, glitchy stuff. Perfect little amp, $50. Like I said, I've seen them from anywhere from $50 to $150. Man, I've been really impressed. A great little amp, and it doesn't have all the frustrating, pesky things of a lot of the new modern amps. And it's not $1,000. So if you find a JMF Spectra 112, buy it right now.